many of the ideas that you discuss in your book have I've been debating them with certain people. Just the overemphasis on individual consumption versus a larger critique of production, and having this be at the feet of the government as opposed to individuals, and largely individuals who have the means and the time to engage in the process of cutting back on certain aspects of their consumption. So let's talk about that core tension that you explore in the book: consumption versus production, as an emphasis on climate change.
Yeah, the first thing to say is that we've kind of almost been trained to only think about the climate change and responsibility through consumption, where we get these carbon footprint calculators and we think about, what we do in our homes, how we drive, what we eat, how we fly, whether or not we have children. Like, all these actions we do in the market as consumers can be traced to various kinds of emissions. And that way of thinking just pretty much erases the role of the people that own and control and profit from production. And so, like when you think of your carbon footprint as like driving and emitting a certain amount of emissions, like you're totally ignoring the role of the oil company that sold you that gasoline that's powering your car, and they're making all the money, they're making all the profit from that. And in a larger sense, like, our energy system is an incredibly complex social system of production. Like the electric grid it's crazy. It has to be balanced, like supply and demand. So you have all these actors who are provisioning electricity to us, and that if we were focusing on that relationship of production is a lot more straightforward than all these kind of scattered consumption acts. And the production is like, for instance, if you were to take a coal-fired electric grid and turn it over to clean energy, the consumption acts can be the exact same, but they would be, from a climate perspective, completely different. So what the book tries to do is to say, really, the struggle over climate change is really about how we produce, not just energy, but the things that use energy in our economy, like steel plants and cement plants and agriculture and all these productive infrastructures that use a lot of energy. Like, that's what we have to transform. So in a kind of old school kind of socialist way, like about seizing the means of production, like that's actually what this struggle is about. It's about really taking control of our system that's run for profit by capital, who's controls it to just make money, to try to say we need to totally transform this energy production system to decarbonize it and make sure it runs on clean energy so we can save the planet from being uninhabitable. So there's a lot of other things I could say about how focusing on consumers and carbon footprints really distracts. Like, even when you focus on the rich and their sort of high emitting.
That was going to be my next question, right? Because just focusing on individual wealthy people's consumption but where are they consuming from, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, you have 3 pools at your 3 houses, and you're flying to Timbuktu or wherever you're going. But you are consuming from someplace, no matter how wealthy you are.
And by only focusing on what they're using their money for as rich people, we don't look at how they make their money. Yeah. And that activity is going to have way more carbon impact. So you could take a CEO of a fossil fuel company that spends like 12 hours a day, like managing a global network of fossil fuel extraction production systems. And maybe they might go home to their heated pool that uses a lot of energy, but their activity of being a fossil fuel exec is way more impactful than what they're doing in their private consumption life. And that's, really where the power is. Because the other thing is, when we think about our responsibility only in terms of consumers, we act as if the capitalist market system is really just this free market where dispersed, decentralized consumers have the power to kind of choose and shape demand. And that's what's driving the economy. That's what shapes production. But, a left perspective would say that's not how the economy works. It's really controlled by a small minority of owners who own production, who profit from these systems. And they're the ones with the real power. And so that's where we really have to pay attention, because Emma, I think you actually brought this up when we talked about this long ago, but like when you only look at someone's consumption, you could look at like a Hollywood actor who has a mansion and drives a Hummer and a private jet, and compare that person with a fossil fuel executive who takes public transit and is a vegetarian, and you would conclude that the Hollywood actor has more impact on the climate compared with the owner of fossil capital. It just makes absolutely no sense to think about it that way. So we're really missing a lot when we only look at the consumptive realm, that's for sure.
And even on a rhetorical level, one, you mentioned that the solution that you're talking about is so much more straightforward. And my experience in covering politics is that often straightforward answers are a little bit scary for capitalists because it involves a class struggle. And the simple answer usually always boils down to that. But even from a political rhetorical level, like Democrats focusing on, we'll just use this country as an example because I'm most familiar with it, but any like center left party, whatever, focusing on individual consumption as a way to combat climate change is like a gift to the right wing, because it's an impossible bar to meet. It also is targeted at a certain class of likely suburbanites, upper middle class types who have the ability to engage in that kind of behavioral change because of wealth and time and the kinds of education that they probably received. Like, it is almost working in tandem with the Democrats saying, basically, we're only going to focus on winning over suburban voters who are disaffected by Trump. Like, that is the kind of person that they're tailoring that towards, and that has zero broad appeal. Yeah.
I mean, you can listen to what the right says about climate politics, and they say this is a conspiracy amongst a liberal elite that's trying to concoct these policies in Washington that are ultimately meant to change your life, to make your life worse, to make your life cost more, and to make you sort of adopt this sort of goody like vegan lifestyle or whatever. And that resonates with a working class that's been beaten down and basically suffering through this kind of highly unequal capitalist system for the last 40, 50 years. And so the right's able to kind of mobilize this kind of opposition to climate on the basis of a kind of class appeal that says this is going to cost your life economically. And you're absolutely right. Like, a lot of liberals just play right into it because a lot of their politics ultimately is about kind of performing this low carbon virtuous life and performing this kind of these individual consumption acts. And that, we need to get beyond that and actually speak to how we can combine climate action with policies that actually improve people's lives, make their access to energy systems more secure and things like that. So.
And in terms of who's driving the climate conversation, let's talk about the makeup of those people and how it probably influences the rhetoric, because I think that fits well into what we just touched on. Using PMC can seem maybe just a little tired to a degree, but those are the kinds of people, right, who are in charge of this discourse. I mean, yes, it's scientists too, but relying on data to sell your political project is not a good way to go.